The SEC is moving to a 9-game conference schedule, and it has a direct impact on ASU's chances for the college football playoff.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Richie Bradshaw, your friend, your guide, your expert for all things Sun Devils, from the gridiron to the hardwood and everything in between. On today's agenda, good news, the SEC is going to a 9-game conference schedule. Bad news, how is this going to affect ASU? What happens to the cross-conference games that ASU has scheduled for the next several years? What happens to strength of schedule for ASU? And what happens to the playing field overall in the college football playoff? All that is coming up on today's episode. Before we get started, thanks as always for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils and making us your first listen of the day. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. I don't know if you know this, and it's really, really cool. ASU has, for the next 2, 4, 6, 8 seasons, not including this year, 1 game with an SEC opponent. That's a really big deal for a lot of reasons. And I don't need to explain to most college football fans why that's a big deal, because in the SEC, it's just different. And in fairness, there's a lot of good teams in the SEC. Over the next 8 years, ASU will have a home and home with Texas A&M, a home and home with Florida, although Florida is split between 2028 and 2031. Really weird. I don't know why. LSU home and home, and Texas home and home. That will go all the way until 2033. Those are all premier programs in the SEC, not like bottom feeders. Like Mississippi State has been up and down. Right now they're down. But Texas A&M, usually pretty good, more often than not. Florida, they, again, more often than not, they're pretty good. LSU, that's one of the higher tier schools. Texas, they're going into their second year in the SEC and are already near the top. These are really good non-conference slots for Arizona State. And hopefully the SEC feels that way too. Now, what ASU does have going for them is they're coming off a college football playoff season. That is something that the SEC will take note of as they start to plan out their future conference games, because they're going from 8 to 9. A lot of their schedules are already set. So they're going to have to cut a non-conference game somewhere. Now, you would think it'd be one of your little Powerpuff games, your little cupcake matchups with an FCS school. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because wins matter a lot when you're trying to get into the college football playoff. And a 10-2 SEC team is going to get the nod over a 10-2 Arizona State team 9 out of 10 times. I mean, 9-3 Alabama had a chance to make the playoff, and the only reason they didn't was because Clemson won the ACC championship game, and SMU had a better record, and they at least were in the ACC championship game. Otherwise, 9-3 Bama probably getting into the playoff. That's the power the SEC has. And you play a team, with no offense to these teams, but you play the Citadel or Old Dominion or, I don't know, just one of those lower tier schools, and that's almost a guaranteed win if you're Alabama, if you're LSU, if you're Texas, if you're Georgia. You schedule those games, you know you're getting a win 99 out of 100 times. Well, that matters. Now, with a little devil's advocate, you did have the College Football Playoff Committee come out and say that they're going to be implementing some kind of new algorithm. I'm not sure if that was their exact phrasing for it, but essentially, they're going to weigh out quality wins over a winning record. And we all know that goes without saying, but it sounds like there's going to be a lot more thought put into it, and there's going to be quality losses now in addition to quality wins. So losing to Arizona State means less than losing to Old Dominion. Now losing to Old Dominion is a massive, massive blow, right? So there is more value in having Arizona State on the schedule compared to, I'm sorry, Old Dominion. I'm not trying to make you the victim here, but that's just the example I got compared to Old Dominion. It's a tougher game, but at the end of the season, when you look at it, you're going to go, "Wow, they beat Arizona State. It's a Power Four school. Even if ASU's bad that year, it's a Power Four school. If ASU's good that year, ooh, that's a good win. They beat Arizona State. That's good for them. Just like for ASU, beat an SEC team. You beat Mississippi State. Everyone's like, still SEC just because it's bottom tier SEC. I mean, if you guys remember going into last year, the comments on Locked On Sun Devils were flooded with people from Starkville. Many were very nice, and many were like, "Yeah, you don't belong on the same field." And it was like, okay, whatever. So all of this is to say that ASU has their SEC games set up through 2033 for their non-conference. The SEC is now losing one of their non-conference games that they have set up or have yet to set up. And ASU is not guaranteed to keep those games. We could have Texas A&M, who ASU plays the next 2 years, 26 and 27, look at their schedule and go, crap, man, we got to make a tough decision here. We still want our FCS beat 'em up game, but we also want to have 2 premier games. And would we rather have Arizona State, or just an example, I don't know their schedule. Would we rather have Arizona State or Michigan or Clemson? They're going to have to make a tough decision like that. And Arizona State might be on the outside looking in if they are trying to compete with the other big name programs. I can't imagine that you're going to have very many college football teams that are going to set up their schedule so they have 3 Power 4 teams in addition to their conference. Would that look great on a resume? Absolutely. But you risk the chance of losing more games. Even if you have one FCS game, it's still a guaranteed win. It can be early in the season. Oh my gosh, side note. Here's hoping it's early in the season, because I cannot stand when I'm watching week 10, week 11 of college football in November, and I've got all these great matchups, and then for some reason, Ole Miss is playing Old Dominion. I'm sorry. I hope no one in here is an Old Dominion alum. If you are, I do apologize. But no one wants to see that. No one. Ole Miss should be playing LSU in November. They should be playing Florida in November. You also have some programs, and speaking of Florida, that have protected rivalries. Florida plays Florida State every year. That is one of their non-conference games every year. So that one's already done. Well, if they want their FCS game, that's 2. So now Florida has to decide, do we still want Arizona State or do we want someone else? Do you see the problem here? There's a lot of power that has now been dealt into the SEC's hands that Arizona State has no control over. None, zero, zilch, nada. They are not able to control the table. They don't have nearly as much say as the SEC does. Even a team lower level like Mississippi State, they could back out and ASU would be caught with their pants around their ankles, because there is so much intrinsic value in playing an SEC school, whether you like it or not. It just is. It's a brand. It's just different. That matters. And it matters a lot to the committee, who we all know I do appreciate the committee, especially because they eventually got it right with ASU. But the committee, we do know there is some bias with certain programs, hence why Alabama was right on the cusp of making the playoff, and they did not win double-digit games last year. Mind-blowing. There is SEC bias very present. And the SEC being able to cancel a game against Arizona State and schedule a game with almost anyone else, that hurts ASU's schedule. And of course, there's the whole aspect of, oh crap, we have to fill the spot. Keep in mind, you have programs and universities that will go years in advance to set up their non-conference. I just told you ASU has their non-conference schedule through 2033, at least one of their games. Through 2033, you're talking about the next 8 seasons. And keep in mind, they just had a home and home with Mississippi State, too. You may be forced to pivot off those games very last second. Florida really worries me because like I said, I don't know if you want to give up that FCS game and you are not giving up the Florida game. So I guess we're going to find out. But this is not a perfect world for Arizona State or really the Big 12. And the strength of schedule is kind of hanging in the balance in a bad way for the conference. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Sun Devils is brought to you by our friends over at Rugient. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugient Ready. Rugient Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugient's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. I love that this is all done online, too. Completely by yourself. Rugient will connect you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. You can check customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugient.com/LockedOnCollege and use the promo code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's Rugient.com, RUGIET/LockedOnCollege, and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugient website for full safety information. Thanks as always for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils to make us your first listen of the day. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. Strength of schedule. That is always a fun conversation to have when we are looking at sports. Hey, just because you went 16-0 and we went 14-2 doesn't mean the 16-0 team is better than the 14-2 team. Do you guys remember a handful of years ago, the Steelers went 15-1 in the regular season, or they might have gone 14-2, and they got to the playoffs and they got absolutely dog walked by Cleveland because they were very much benefiting from the weakness of their schedule that year. That happens a lot. That's the problem the Big 12 might run into. And we'll start with this. The Big 12, love it, hate it, right, wrong, or indifferent, is not a conference that gets much respect. It's just a fact of life. And unfortunately, ASU fans should be pretty familiar with this because that was the case when we were in the Pac-12. It's sandlot football, right? It's not the big leagues, and they just beat up on each other, and there's never a good team, and this, that, and the other. That's what we hear every single time there was a Big 12 or a Pac-12 team that would stand out. Now it's the Big 12. And the Big 12, tons of parity because there's not Oklahoma anymore, who runs a conference every year, and there's not the big popular dog on the block right now with Texas. No, the Big 12 is looking for its identity right now. They do not have a face of the league that Texas and Oklahoma were. There's potential. Obviously, Arizona State's right there. But like Kansas State and Oklahoma State and Iowa State and Baylor and Texas Tech and TCU have been in the conference for a while. They definitely would love to be the face. Utah has been prevalent for the last several years. They'd love to be the face. BYU is starting to come up. They would love to be the face. It's great. It's wide open. But there's the problem. There's not a team that everyone looks at. And when you beat them, you go, wow, I can't believe so and so just beat so and so. When you're Vanderbilt and you beat Alabama, people talk about that. If you're Arizona State in 2023 and you beat Oklahoma State in 2023, people would talk about that for a very different reason. It'd be more of a shocking loss rather than a holy cow, is Vanderbilt like actually a good football team? Should we be talking about them more? It turns into a national conversation for the next week. People would stop talking about ASU beating Oklahoma State within 48 hours. There's levels to this stuff. The Big 12 simply does not have the brand name value that the SEC has. There is no Texas or Oklahoma, very literally, but there's not even really an Ole Miss right now. There's not a Florida. There's just not. So you're waiting to get there. You could get there. Maybe ASU, Baylor, Iowa State, and BYU start running the conference for the next 4 to 5 years. Okay, well now you're kind of the icons of the conference. Maybe then you can get to that point. Okay, but what about until then? What are we doing until then? Because right now we are trying to close a gap that is very wide in terms of respect for the conference. It's not there. You are now going to deal with what should have always been the case of the SEC playing 9 conference games. But now that's one more conference game for the SEC that they get to flaunt and strut about and peacock for themselves. And it's unfortunate because it should have always been this way. Always. It was always ridiculous that the SEC was playing nobodies in November. Always ridiculous. And the arguments that you would hear from SEC fans made you just want to rip your ears off. Irritated me to no end. We deserve it. We're better. Stop. I don't care how good you are. You never hear the 2007 New England Patriots go, yeah, we deserve to play the Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville Jaguars. We're just that good. We need a break. No, get out of here. Get out of here with that. That's terrible. That's terrible logic. But now the SEC gets their 9th conference game, and they get it at the best and worst time. It's the best time because, in theory, the playing field is even. Okay, well, all the conferences play 9 games now. Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC. All are 9 conference games. The American Conference, not the AAC, the American Conference, the Mountain West Conference, the eventual Pac-12 when it reunites with itself. The MAC, they all play non-conference games. Everyone's on an equal level field. But the SEC is already toting itself. And now they get to go, well, we brought ourselves down to everyone else's level. We did you a favor, college football. We, the almighty SEC, did you a favor. And we will make you feel better. That's the way they're going to look at it. Not the way of like the way the Big Ten put it, which is what got them to that point where they're like, well, we play 9 conference games. So if they want these auto bids that they're asking for, then they need to do what everyone else is doing. That's the only reason they did it. And because now all the college football playoff talk is coming. If you still had a 4-team college football playoff, this wouldn't be happening. If you still had the BCS, this wouldn't be happening. But it's coming at a great time and a horrible time at the same time, depending on where you're at. So back to ASU and back to the Big 12. They've been doing this, and they are going to be punished for doing it because now everyone is going to look at the SEC. Oh, look how great they are. Oh, they're finally doing 9 games. Oh, this is amazing. We have better football to watch. There it is. Better football to watch. What is someone going to care about more? When Alabama beats Vanderbilt or when Arizona State beats UCF? Which one matters more? They shouldn't matter any differently. You're talking about the best team against the worst team. But people would still look at the schedule at the end of the year and they go, Vanderbilt's better than UCF. And you know what? Maybe they are. But in the perspective of your conference, that's not true. And it's unfortunate. And it's a bummer that ASU has to pay the price for the SEC finally owning up to a decades-long mistake that they have been doing. It punishes ASU. It punishes the Big 12. Strength of schedule, it's going to be perceived a lot differently now, which makes getting those out-of-conference games against the SEC that much more important. Because maybe Alabama did beat Vanderbilt and maybe ASU did beat UCF, but if Alabama lost to ASU in the same season, there's no debating. There's no debating. But if Alabama had ASU on the schedule and they knocked them off, well, now we won't know. These things matter, not just for placement, but for getting into the playoff period. There was only one Big 12 team in the playoff last year. There was a good argument that BYU should have got in. They didn't even go to the conference championship game. Iowa State had a good argument to get in. It's going to be tough. It just got that much more difficult. In fact, I want to talk about the college football playoff field a little bit more and why it is way more difficult for the Big 12. Coming up next, this is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk about open phone. For those who are running a small business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed service. If that first person didn't answer, did you wait? Yeah, probably not. You moved on. That's why you need open phone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. Open phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you judge people who have 2 different phone calls, right? There's a business phone, there's a personal phone. Well, you can settle all that together. You don't have to be that person, and you can help someone else not be that person because open phone solves that for you. There's a shared inbox essentially because your team can share one number. There's no communicating and going, who's handling this? All sorts of good stuff is available through open phone. See why over 60,000 businesses trust open phone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's openphone, openphone.com/lockedoncollege. They will even port over your existing numbers for free. Open phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Also want to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your fantasy predictions into real awards. Preseason, we're just about done. College football season is starting up this weekend. How great is that? And whether you've got your eye on big name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get into the game. Okay, well, Farmageddon is this weekend. Are you taking a look at some good stuff going on for the Kansas State team? Avery Johnson has a max discount on August 23rd. That's this Saturday, 9 a.m. for a half passing yard. In other words, he passes for 1 yard. You're going to win. You can do this with fantasy football too. I link it with the players I have. I need Lamar Jackson to throw 200 yards. So if he throws 201, I just won on Prize Picks too. It's the best. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils to make us your first listen of the day. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. The college football playoff field, it's drastically going to be affected. And we did talk about it quite a bit. So I don't know that we really need to get into too many more details, but I do want to explore the Big 12 a little bit more. The Big 12 had one team last year. Now keep in mind, first year of the 12-team playoff, there were 5 guaranteed spots for winning your conference as long as you were the highest ranked conference champion. So your Power 4 teams got in there. The SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12 got their conference champions in there. And Boise State was able to make it as a champion of the Mountain West because they were the highest rated there. But that doesn't mean that that's always going to be how it happens for which conference champions get in. Because if the Big 12 one year has their conference champion what would that be? A 9-4 team? Ooh, that's bad. Because Army just finished with a 12-1 record, and Boise State just finished with a 12-1 record. Gee, I wonder who's getting in the playoff. Probably those two programs. Okay, that hurts. That hurts the Big 12. What do we do from there? I guess we'll play it off and find out what happens after that. That's the beauty of the auto bids, I suppose. Thanks again for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils to make us your first listen of the day. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. We've talked a bit about the college football playoff field, so I don't know that there's too much to get into with the weeds, but there is some things that do matter. One of those things isn't as big a deal anymore, and that was the guaranteed bye weeks. So you had the way that it worked for the first year was the 5 highest rated conference champion teams got to go into the playoff. They were guaranteed a spot. And the top 4 of the highest 5 got a bye week. So that's not going to be a thing anymore, thankfully. I appreciate ASU got a bye. I'm curious what would have happened if they didn't and they got a home game instead. I don't know. Regardless, though, you're not going to have to deal with that. That much is nice. But the 5 highest rated champions are guaranteed a playoff spot. But let's say the Big 12 champion this year went 9-4. Okay, well, we're expecting the Big 10 champion. We'll say Michigan went 13-0. We'll say the SEC champion Georgia went 13-0. We'll say the ACC champion Clemson went 13-0. Okay, well, that's 3 spots locked up there. Sounds like there's 2 more conference champion spots up for grabs. Who's going to get them? Okay, ASU just went 9-4. Well, you're a Power 4 team. Hopefully that helps. But it's about where you're ranked. And a 9-4 team is not going to be ranked inside the top 15. You know who might be ranked inside the top 15? A 12-1 Boise State team or an 11-2 Army team. Well, there's the auto bids. Glad you won your conference, ASU. You're not going to the playoff. And that's a Power 4 team that is not going to the playoff. That's very unfortunate. Now, the SEC has that extra conference game. And again, this is great news. But it could also really affect close teams in terms of record. I mentioned this earlier, how ASU was able to make it in at 11-2, but Alabama was right there at 9-3. That was with Alabama playing 4 out of conference games. Alabama goes 9-3 with 9 conference games. They have a much stronger bid now. Much stronger. Should it? Maybe. Because maybe that other game was against one of the high-profile teams they didn't play this year. Okay? That matters a little bit more. And you can't deny that it matters a little bit more. It does. And again, phrase of the podcast, right, wrong, or indifferent. These get measured into the importance. It happens. There's just not much that we can do. So what can the Big 12 do about this? What can Arizona State do about this? Because right now, you're basically just hoping to win your conference. If you're the Big 12, if you're a team in the Big 12, you're already at a disadvantage. Because Iowa State were they 11? I think they were 10-3. That sounds right in the regular season. Whatever they were, though, they didn't get into the playoff. And they weren't getting into the playoff because of freaking Alabama being 9-3. Ole Miss was 9-3. They were making a bid for it. South Carolina was 9-3. They were making a bid for it. And there's a real chance if they went 9-3 with 9 conference games that they get in over an 11-2 Iowa State team. To a certain extent, that's not fair. But again, this is why it's so complicated, because you have to take into account the strength of schedule. You have to take into account the quality wins and the quality losses. There's all sorts of stuff that gets juggled into this. But the biggest problem is you just feed into the SEC bias. And that is a problem. That is a definitive problem that we have had in college football for decades. And even though this is the right thing to do, and don't get me wrong, I am 100% in support of it. I have been waiting for this day for a very long time. I am thrilled as a college football fan. I'm not necessarily scared as an ASU fan, but I will tell you that as an ASU fan, I look at that and I go, well, that might come back to bite us. And not because we did anything wrong, but because the SEC did what they should have done a long time ago, and now they're getting praised for it. Everyone is rejoicing today, and everyone is celebrating the SEC. I am celebrating that the SEC did what they were supposed to do. There are more people out there who are celebrating the SEC for doing it because it's like, you know what? We're going to appease you. We'll be the bigger people. We'll play 9 conference games. That way everyone's happy. Okay, Big 10. Okay, Big 12. Okay, at ACC. Now we all play 9 games. That's the SEC's logic. They love smelling their own farts down there in the Southeastern Conference. They do. It's unfortunate. But you know what? The playing field is even. I'm happy about it. What's going to come out of this, I suppose? And how much more difficult is scheduling going to be? Suddenly, there's like an emphasis on getting an SEC team on your schedule every year for everyone. For the Big 10, for the Big 12, the ACC, for Boise State, for all your contenders in G5. There is now an emphasis on getting an SEC team on your schedule because you know at the end of the year, people are going to be talking about those SEC teams. You can play Mississippi State this year, Arizona State, and if Mississippi State upsets LSU, holy cow, that win just got a lot more impressive. That win got a lot more impressive very, very quickly. That's what this does for you. By having an SEC team on your schedule, your entire perception is going to change. It's beautiful. It is. It's dramatic. It is. It's terrifying. And hopefully, this ends up being a good balance rather than teetering the line towards the SEC even more. I'm proud of the SEC for doing what they were supposed to do, but man, is the timing crappy. But it's also not crappy. I'm conflicted. I'm happy. I am. But I want to know what you guys are. Are you happy that this happened? Or are you concerned about the long term ramifications for programs like Arizona State who have to fight the allegations every year? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrads36 or the podcast at LO_Sun Devils, wherever you're getting your shows. Hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. You'll get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning into Locked On Sun Devils to make us your first listen of the day. Shout out my everydayers who are here every day. Thank you all so much. As always, we are coming down to the wire. We are just over a week out from ASU's opening game. Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football is finally stepping up to the plate, and he's going to join us to tell me why, even though he took ASU as his second best team in the Big 12 in his preseason rankings, which is still wrong, that he is taking ASU to be the fourth best team in the conference with a 9-3 record with 3 teams ahead of them. Well, we're going to pick his brain, and we're probably going to yell at him. And if you don't want to miss that episode, then make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications on. I'll catch you later, and until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On.